what kind of justice is this? It's outrageous. And I tell you what, the British people see right through this. They say he's been punished for Brexit. They didn't like Brexit. This is the revenge of the establishment. And it's not pretty, but I don't think they like what's going to happen next.
Well, let's speak to David C. Bannerman, chairman of the Conservative Democratic Organisation, who stand for getting order back, really, within the Conservative Party, getting some principles back. He's also a former Conservative MEP. It's pretty unedifying, all this, isn't it, David?
Well, I think it's an absolute scandal. I think the way Boris has been treated, and the 14 million people that he got to vote for him have also been badly mistreated by this kangaroo court. I mean, it deserves that description because it is not acted in any reasonable or fair manner. I mean, for example, the chairman of the committee actually allegedly she said that he was guilty 3 times just before the inquiry started. You wouldn't allow a judge to get away with that. And so I've got real concerns about this. It's a shameful day for Parliament. And those MPs on that committee really should be brought to book. There's allegations of safe seats being offered to one of the individuals, or even 2 of the individuals on that committee on the Tory side. So, we really need to get to grips with this because it's a shambles, and it's a scandal for democracy.
14 million people, you say, voted for him, and it's a scandal for them. But that was before he was fined for breaking COVID rules which he set in place.
Sunak was fined twice. Let's remember that. He was actually fined twice. So what are we doing about Sunak?
But in terms of Boris Johnson, you could argue that those 14 million people who voted for him do not feel in the same way. And to respond to the claim on Harriet Harman, I mean, we've just been speaking to the Institute of Government about this. There are 2 Labour MPs, 4 Tory MPs and 1 SNP MP on that committee. And it's been suggested to us that there are guardrails against bias in that committee. All of those Conservative MPs would have had to have been satisfied with Harriet Harman too.
Arguably, there's 1 pro-Boris MP on that committee. There's a few people, I know them, I respect them as individuals, but they have a real axe to grind against Boris. It's really outrageous how they behaved, and they should be brought to account on this. Maybe deselect them. To be honest, let's get a vote of no confidence on those MPs.
So you would like the 4 Conservative MPs in the Privileges Committee deselected?
Well, I think there should be a vote of no confidence and let their associations decide, because many of those association members are actually very pro-Boris. Something like 60-70% of the Conservative Party is pro-Boris. And you've got a problem where MPs don't represent their views, and there's contempt being shown, which is why the CDO, Conservative Democratic Organisation, exists. Complete contempt for the views of members, and this is all part of it. And this is the result you get.
Yeah, we should point out.
Successful Prime Minister.
We should point out that those Conservative MPs are Andy Carter, Alberto Costa, Sir Bernard Jenkin, and Sir Charles Walker. The Conservative Democratic Organisation, you say that your only purpose is to make the party more accountable to the rank and file, to the membership. Now, Here is Boris Johnson being made accountable for his actions. He's hardly promoting, in you defending him, that's sort of hardly promoting the party being more accountable, is it?
Well, we believe in proper democratic processes, and you're not making up charges like some sort of 17th century.
But Boris Johnson decided to resign as an MP before it got to that democratic process, and that's on him.
He was already condemned by them. I mean, to be honest,
but he didn't want to subject himself to the democratic process of a vote in the Commons.
Well, so the chairman of the committee was texting he was guilty before the inquiry started. I mean, what kind of justice is this? It's outrageous. And I tell you what, the British people see right through this. They say he's been punished for Brexit. They didn't like Brexit. This is the revenge of the establishment. And it's not pretty, but I don't think they like what's going to happen next. I think there's going to be a huge backlash to this. And Boris will be back, but he'll be in a very powerful position when he comes back because of his ill treatment.
What do you hear then? If you are convinced, sure that there will be a backlash and Boris Johnson will return in a strong position, what does that look like? What are we talking about here?
Well, there are by-elections going on, as we know, several by-elections, mid-beds, for example, Henley coming up. There's elections going on as well. And of course, Boris, I believe, remains a Conservative candidate, even though he's not an MP now, as of today. So there are options there. And frankly, if he's not allowed to stand, maybe he'll stand as an independent Conservative and then be welcomed back, once he wins. And I do believe he would win in some of these seats like Mid-Beds, Henley. He still has enormous electoral appeal. And I think what the polls show really is that those that always didn't like Boris just hate him now, and they think they've got a good excuse to. But there's still a lot of quiet support. It may be quieter than it was because, of all the aggression being shown.
Look, Matt in Nottingham's messaged us and just said there'd be fewer anti-Boris MPs if he wasn't such an arse.
Well, I mean, that's his opinion. I mean, an arse in what way? Was he an arse actually defending Ukraine from invasion? Was he an arse actually getting a vaccine? Was Mr. Nottingham there? Was he actually saved by a vaccine or members of his family because of what happened actually in Number 10?
But overridingly, despite Boris Johnson's good points, he's let himself down, hasn't he, here, by breaking his own rules. And there's other information that we don't yet know the full extent of in terms of those different meetings with friends and family during the lockdown period.
Well, that's all been dismissed. I mean,
it hasn't.
Lord Panic, who's advised anti-Brexit people before, he's a top lawyer, and he says there's no foundation to any of that Chequer stuff. It was released cynically by Number 10, by the Cabinet Office, just before the committee was due to bring it out its report. And it appears to have tipped the balance against Boris. He got 5 days suspension. It could be a different ball game. But I really do think they are going to get swept away as a result of this. Number 10, Sunak, I think he's on borrowed time. And he was lying today, by the way. He was actually lying about what the powers of the Prime Minister are. The Prime Minister can veto a list on the Lords. I mean, that has been, if you look up as I've done earlier, if you look up the guidance, Number 10 has that right. And there are 8 names removed from that list. So
but it's obviously Rishi Sunak's choice as to whether he decides to extend that flexibility or not, or whether he does it according to the book.
Saying, he said it's all down to the House of Lords Appointments Committee. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm sorry. I hope he isn't lying. I hope that, that would just really add fuel to the fire. And the resentment will go even deeper than we have at the moment.
David, thanks for speaking to us this evening. That's David C. Bannerman, who's chairman of the Conservative Democratic Organisation and a former Conservative MEP.